Welcome to the History AI podcast, where the past comes alive with facts, anecdotes, and a dash of humor. Here are your hosts, Chuck and Marco.
Welcome back, history enthusiasts, to another episode of the History AI podcast. I'm Chuck.
And I'm Marco. Today, we're diving into the climax of the American Revolutionary War, the Battle of Yorktown.
That's right, Marco. This battle marked the beginning of the end for British rule in America. We'll be breaking down the events, key figures, and strategies that led to this pivotal moment in history.
And as always, we'll have some fun along the way. So, sit back, relax, and let's journey back to 1781.
Before we delve into the Battle of Yorktown itself, it's crucial to understand the broader context of the American Revolutionary War by 1781. The war had been raging for 6 long years, with both sides experiencing victories and setbacks. The British, under General Sir Henry Clinton, maintained a stronghold in New York City and sought to consolidate their control in the southern colonies. Their strategy was to isolate the southern states and rally loyalist support to crush the rebellion from the south upwards.
Meanwhile, the American forces, led by General George Washington, were spread thin and faced significant challenges, including shortages of supplies, funding, and morale. The French alliance, solidified in 1778, was a game-changer. The French provided not only troops but also vital naval support, funds, and supplies, which were desperately needed by the Continental Army.
By 1780, the British shifted their focus to the southern colonies, achieving some initial success with the capture of Charleston, South Carolina, and a victory at the Battle of Camden. However, they faced fierce resistance from American forces and local militias. The guerrilla tactics employed by American commanders like Nathaniel Greene and Francis Marion, the Swamp Fox, frustrated British efforts to maintain control over the countryside.
The turning point came in early 1781 with the Battle of Cowpens, a decisive victory for the Americans under General Daniel Morgan. This victory bolstered American morale and disrupted British plans. Following this, General Cornwallis, who commanded British forces in the South, decided to move his troops into Virginia, believing he could cut off American supply lines and link up with British forces in the North.
Cornwallis set up his base in Yorktown, Virginia, strategically located on a peninsula between the York and James rivers. He believed that this position would allow easy resupply and reinforcement by the British Navy. However, this move also made his forces vulnerable to a coordinated land and sea assault.
At the same time, General Washington was in New York, contemplating an assault on the British stronghold there. But the arrival of the French fleet under Admiral de Grasse in the Chesapeake Bay presented a golden opportunity. De Grasse's fleet effectively blocked British naval access, making Cornwallis's position at Yorktown precarious.
Washington and the French General Rochambeau quickly coordinated a plan. They decided to march their combined forces over 400 miles from New York to Virginia in a daring and secretive maneuver. This march, known as the Grand Reconnaissance, was a logistical feat that required meticulous planning and precise execution.
Their goal was to encircle Cornwallis and prevent any escape or resupply. By late September 1781, the American and French forces had successfully surrounded Yorktown. The stage was set for a siege that would ultimately determine the fate of the American Revolution.
With Cornwallis trapped and no relief in sight, the British were about to face a relentless and well-coordinated siege. The events leading up to this moment were a blend of strategic brilliance, daring maneuvers, and the crucial alliance between the Americans and the French.
The scene was set for what would become one of the most significant battles in American history, demonstrating the determination and resilience of the revolutionary forces. Now, let's move on to the details of the siege itself.
The Siege of Yorktown officially began on September 28, 1781, but the groundwork had been laid months in advance through meticulous planning and coordination between the American and French forces. General Washington and General Rochambeau led a combined army of about 17,000 troops, including Continental soldiers, French regulars, and militia, all converging on Yorktown.
Washington and Rochambeau's march from New York to Virginia was a logistical marvel. They managed to move thousands of troops, along with artillery and supplies, over 400 miles without the British realizing their ultimate target until it was too late. The march was conducted with such secrecy and speed that it caught General Cornwallis and the British forces off guard.
By September 26, the Allied forces had started crossing the James River, and within a couple of days, they had fully encircled Yorktown. Cornwallis, who had entrenched his forces in a defensive position, now faced a formidable foe. His troops were outnumbered and cut off from potential reinforcements and supplies due to the French naval blockade.
The French fleet, commanded by Admiral de Grasse, played a crucial role in the siege. De Grasse had earlier engaged and defeated a British fleet at the Battle of the Chesapeake, ensuring that Cornwallis could not be resupplied or evacuated by sea. This naval victory was a turning point, as it effectively isolated the British forces in Yorktown.
On September 28, Washington and Rochambeau ordered the initial maneuvers to surround Yorktown. The Allied forces began constructing siege lines, digging trenches parallel to the British defenses. These trenches allowed them to move closer to the British fortifications while remaining under cover from enemy fire.
The first parallel trench, located about 800 yards from the British defences, was completed on October 6. This trench allowed the Allies to bring their artillery within effective range of the British positions. The bombardment began on October 9, with American and French cannons unleashing a relentless barrage on the British fortifications.
The artillery fire was devastating. The British defences, consisting of earthen redoubts and fortifications, began to crumble under the continuous bombardment. Cornwallis's troops were forced to hunker down, suffering significant casualties and material losses.
The Allies then began constructing a second parallel trench, even closer to the British lines. This trench, completed on October 11, was about 400 yards from the British positions. It provided an even better position for artillery and infantry assaults. The Allied forces continued their relentless artillery bombardment, further weakening the British defences.
One of the key moments in the siege was the assault on the British redoubts No. 9 and No. 10 on the night of October 14. These redoubts were crucial to the British defensive line. French forces, led by General de Villaminel, attacked Redoubt No. 9, while American forces under Alexander Hamilton assaulted Redoubt No. 10.
The assaults were swift and decisive. The American and French troops overran the redoubts in a matter of minutes, capturing them with minimal casualties. The fall of these redoubts allowed the Allied forces to complete the second parallel trench and bring their artillery even closer to the British positions.
Cornwallis, realizing that his situation was becoming increasingly desperate, made a last-ditch attempt to break the siege. On the night of October 16, he ordered a sortie against the second parallel trench, hoping to disrupt the Allied siege works. However, the sortie was repulsed, and the British suffered heavy losses.
With his defences crumbling and no hope of relief, Cornwallis began negotiating terms of surrender on October 17. The relentless pressure from the American and French forces had left him with no viable options. The siege of Yorktown had effectively sealed the fate of the British forces in America.
The success of the siege was a testament to the coordination and cooperation between the American and French forces. Their combined efforts, both on land and at sea, had trapped Cornwallis and his troops, leading to one of the most significant victories in American history.
This siege demonstrated the effectiveness of siege warfare and the importance of strategic alliances. It was a pivotal moment in the American Revolution, setting the stage for the eventual British surrender and the end of the war. Now, let's discuss the key figures who played a crucial role in this victory.
To truly understand the significance of the Siege of Yorktown, we need to delve deeper into the roles played by General George Washington and General Jean-Baptiste Donatien de Vimeur, Comte de Rochambeau. Their partnership was instrumental in the victory that would secure American independence.
Let's start with George Washington, the Commander-in-Chief of the Continental Army. By 1781, Washington had become a seasoned leader through years of campaigning. He was not only a military tactician but also a master at maintaining morale and unity among his often ragtag troops. Washington's leadership style was characterized by his ability to inspire and his unwavering dedication to the revolutionary cause.
Washington's strategic brilliance was evident in how he managed to keep the British guessing. For much of the war, he had maintained pressure on British forces in New York, creating a diversion that misled the British High Command about his true intentions. His ability to orchestrate the surprise march to Virginia without tipping off the British is a testament to his strategic acumen.
Now, let's talk about General Rochambeau. Sent by King Louis XVI to support the American cause, Rochambeau brought with him a wealth of military experience and a seasoned French army. Unlike many other foreign military leaders, Rochambeau was willing to work under Washington's command, understanding the importance of unity and cooperation for the success of their combined forces.
Rochambeau's contributions went beyond just military support. He provided crucial insights into siege warfare, which proved invaluable during the Siege of Yorktown. His understanding of European military tactics and siege operations complemented Washington's experience with guerrilla and conventional warfare.
The rapport between Washington and Rochambeau was based on mutual respect and shared goals. Despite cultural and language barriers, they developed a strong working relationship. They frequently communicated and planned together, ensuring that their forces operated in unison. This level of coordination was crucial, especially during the long march from New York to Virginia.
It's worth noting that Rochambeau's troops were not just reinforcements but well-trained soldiers equipped with the latest in European military technology. The French army brought advanced artillery pieces that were pivotal during the bombardments of Yorktown. Rochambeau's engineers also played a crucial role in the construction of the siege works, guiding the American troops in building effective trenches and fortifications.
One of the standout moments of their collaboration was the decision-making process leading up to the siege. Washington initially considered attacking New York but was convinced by Rochambeau to focus on Virginia, leveraging the presence of the French fleet under Admiral de Grasse. This strategic pivot was a gamble that paid off immensely, catching the British off guard and trapping Cornwallis's army.
During the siege itself, both leaders were in the thick of the action. Washington oversaw the American lines, ensuring that his troops were well positioned and motivated. Rochambeau, on the other hand, managed the French forces with precision, coordinating artillery strikes and infantry movements to maximize their impact on the British defenses.
Their combined leadership also extended to maintaining discipline and order among the troops. The diversity within the Allied ranks, which included American soldiers, French regulars, and militia, required careful management to avoid conflicts and ensure effective collaboration. Both leaders succeeded in this, maintaining high spirits and a unified front throughout the grueling siege.
The success at Yorktown was as much a victory of leadership as it was of military might. Washington and Rochambeau's ability to strategize, adapt, and cooperate set the stage for the final triumph. Their leadership was not just about winning battles but about forging a partnership that exemplified the potential of international alliances.
The legacy of their partnership is evident in the outcome of the Siege of Yorktown. It wasn't just a battle won, it was the culmination of years of struggle and collaboration that ultimately led to American independence. Their example continues to inspire military leaders and historians alike, highlighting the importance of unity and shared vision in achieving great feats.
With Washington and Rochambeau at the helm, the Siege of Yorktown became a masterclass in siege warfare and international cooperation. Their leadership turned the tide of the war, bringing the dream of American independence closer to reality. When we discuss the Siege of Yorktown, it's essential to highlight the contributions of James Armistead, an unsung hero whose espionage work was crucial to the American victory. Born into slavery in Virginia, Armistead's story is one of incredible bravery and ingenuity.
James Armistead volunteered to serve the Continental Army under the Marquis de Lafayette, who was impressed by his courage and resourcefulness. Recognizing the need for reliable intelligence, Lafayette devised a plan to use Armistead as a spy. The plan was risky, but Armistead was determined to play his part in the struggle for freedom.
Armistead posed as a runaway slave and successfully infiltrated British lines. He offered his services to the British, who were eager to use his knowledge of the local terrain to their advantage. Cornwallis and his officers believed Armistead to be a trustworthy informant and used him to gather intelligence on American forces.
This was a double-edged sword. Armistead gained access to vital British plans and movements, which he relayed back to Lafayette. He frequently traveled between the British and American camps, carrying false information to the British while providing accurate intelligence to the Americans. His ability to gain the trust of high-ranking British officers was extraordinary.
One of Armistead's most significant contributions was providing detailed information about Cornwallis's planned movements and fortifications. He reported on troop deployments, supply lines, and defensive strategies, which allowed the Allied forces to adjust their plans accordingly. This intelligence was instrumental in the Allies' ability to set up effective siege lines and prepare for the British defences.
For example, Armistead's reports on the construction and reinforcement of British redoubts No. 9 and No. 10 were critical. This intelligence allowed Washington and Rochambeau to plan the successful assaults on these positions, which were key to tightening the noose around Cornwallis's forces.
Armistead's espionage wasn't just limited to tactical information. He also provided insights into the morale and condition of the British troops, which were suffering from low supplies and the constant bombardment by American and French artillery. Knowing the weakening state of the enemy helped the Allies maintain their pressure and hasten the British surrender.
It's important to note that Armistead's work as a spy was incredibly dangerous. If he had been discovered, he would have faced certain execution. Despite the risks, he continued to deliver critical information, showcasing his remarkable bravery and commitment to the cause.
After the victory at Yorktown, Armistead returned to his life as a slave, but his invaluable contributions did not go unnoticed. In recognition of his service, Lafayette wrote a letter of commendation on his behalf. This letter helped Armistead successfully petition for his freedom, which was granted by the Virginia legislature in 1787.
After gaining his freedom, James Armistead adopted the surname Lafayette in honor of the Marquis. He continued to live in Virginia, where he was eventually granted a pension for his service during the Revolutionary War. His story is a powerful reminder of the diverse contributions to the American victory and the often overlooked sacrifices made by African Americans during the war.
Armistead's espionage work had a direct impact on the outcome of the Siege of Yorktown. His intelligence allowed the Allied forces to outmaneuver the British, ensuring a decisive victory. His bravery and strategic contributions exemplify the critical roles played by individuals who, though often forgotten, were vital to the success of the American Revolution.
James Armistead Lafayette's legacy is a testament to the power of courage and intelligence in the fight for freedom. His actions at Yorktown not only helped secure American independence but also paved the way for future generations to recognize the importance of every individual's contribution to history.
His story adds a rich layer to the narrative of Yorktown, showing that the victory was achieved not just through battles but also through the silent, unseen efforts of spies like Armistead. The Siege of Yorktown is often cited as a textbook example of siege warfare, and for good reason. The effective use of trenches and artillery by the American and French forces played a crucial role in breaking down the British defenses and forcing Cornwallis's surrender.
The siege began with the construction of a series of trenches, designed to bring the Allied forces closer to the British fortifications while minimizing exposure to enemy fire. These trenches were dug in parallel lines, each one bringing the siege lines progressively nearer to the British positions.
The first parallel trench was started on the night of October 6, 1781, approximately 800 yards from the British defenses. This trench was dug by both American and French troops, working tirelessly through the night to avoid detection and minimize casualties. The trench provided cover for the infantry and artillery, allowing them to move closer to the enemy with some degree of safety.
Once the first parallel was completed, the Allied forces began to bring up their artillery. The French provided a significant portion of the heavy artillery, including mortars and cannons capable of firing both solid shot and explosive shells. These artillery pieces were strategically placed along the trench, aiming to bombard the British fortifications.
The bombardment commenced on October 9, with a relentless barrage that targeted the British defenses day and night. The Allied artillery unleashed a devastating firestorm, with cannons and mortars pounding the British positions. The psychological and physical impact of this continuous bombardment was immense, weakening the morale and effectiveness of Cornwallis's troops.
The Allied artillery strategy was meticulous. The gunners aimed to destroy key British fortifications, supply depots, and artillery positions. The accurate and sustained artillery fire caused significant damage to the British defences, making it increasingly difficult for Cornwallis's forces to hold their positions or mount any effective counterattacks.
With the first parallel trench in place and the artillery causing havoc, the Allied forces then began constructing the second parallel trench. This trench was dug approximately 400 yards from the British lines, bringing the attackers even closer. The second parallel was completed on October 11, providing a new base for further artillery and infantry operations.
The proximity of the second parallel allowed for even more precise and concentrated artillery fire. The Allied gunners could now target specific weaknesses in the British defences, increasing the pressure on Cornwallis's troops. The construction of this trench also paved the way for the planned infantry assaults on key British positions, such as the redoubts.
One of the most critical assaults of the siege took place on the night of October 14, when American and French troops launched coordinated attacks on British redoubts No. 9 and No. 10. These redoubts were essential to the British defensive line, and their capture was vital for the success of the siege.
The assault on Redoubt No. 10 was led by American forces under the command of Alexander Hamilton. The attack was swift and decisive, with Hamilton's men scaling the fortifications and overwhelming the British defenders in a matter of minutes. Simultaneously, French forces under the command of General de Viemenil successfully captured Redoubt No. 9.
The fall of these redoubts was a turning point in the siege. It allowed the Allied forces to complete the second parallel trench and bring their artillery even closer to the British lines. With the redoubts in Allied hands, the British position became untenable, and Cornwallis's forces were increasingly exposed to withering artillery fire.
The final phase of the siege saw the Allied forces intensify their bombardment, with artillery pounding the British positions from close range. The precision and volume of fire left the British defences in ruins, their fortifications shattered, and their troops demoralised. Cornwallis attempted a last-ditch sortie on the night of October 16, hoping to disrupt the siege works, but the attack failed, and his troops suffered heavy casualties.
By October 17, Cornwallis realized that further resistance was futile. The relentless artillery fire, combined with the encroaching trench lines and the loss of key defensive positions, left him with no viable options. He initiated negotiations for surrender, which were completed 2 days later.
The success of the trench and artillery strategy at Yorktown was a testament to the planning and execution by the Allied commanders and engineers. The coordinated effort between American and French forces, the effective use of heavy artillery, and the disciplined construction of siege works all contributed to the decisive victory.
The Siege of Yorktown remains a classic example of siege warfare, demonstrating how methodical and relentless pressure, combined with advanced engineering and artillery tactics, can overcome even well-fortified positions. Now, let's move on to the surrender of Cornwallis and the impact it had on the course of the American Revolution. By mid-October 1781, the situation for the British forces under General Cornwallis had become untenable. The relentless bombardment from the American and French artillery, combined with the progressive encroachment of siege trenches, had left his defenses in shambles and his troops demoralized.
Cornwallis found himself trapped on the Yorktown Peninsula, cut off from any hope of reinforcement or evacuation due to the French naval blockade in the Chesapeake Bay. His last-ditch sortie on October 16 to disrupt the Allied siege lines had failed, and his options were rapidly dwindling.
On the morning of October 17, recognizing the futility of continued resistance and the impending destruction of his forces, Cornwallis took the first step towards surrender. He sent a drummer and an officer bearing a white flag to the American lines to request a ceasefire. This marked the beginning of formal negotiations for surrender.
Washington and Rochambeau, understanding the significance of the moment, responded promptly but cautiously. They were determined to ensure that the terms of surrender would reflect the hard-fought victory and the strategic advantage they held. A temporary ceasefire was agreed upon to allow for negotiations to take place.
The negotiations commenced on October 18. Representing the American and French forces were two key officers, Lieutenant Colonel John Laurens, aide-de-camp to Washington, and the Marquis de Noailles, a French officer. For the British, the negotiators were Major Alexander Ross and Captain Thomas Dundas.
Washington's demands were firm. He insisted that the British troops must lay down their arms and march out of their fortifications to an open field where they would formally surrender. This was to be done in full view of the Allied forces, symbolizing the totality of the British defeat. Cornwallis, recognizing his precarious position, had little room for negotiation and largely acquiesced to these terms.
The formal Articles of Capitulation were signed on October 19, 1781. The terms stipulated that the British would surrender their entire force, which included around 7,000 soldiers, along with their artillery and military supplies. The British officers were allowed to keep their sidearms and return to Britain on parole, provided they did not take up arms against the American and French forces again.
One poignant aspect of the surrender was Cornwallis's absence from the ceremony. Claiming illness, Cornwallis delegated the task to his second-in-command, General Charles O'Hara. Many historians believe Cornwallis's absence was an attempt to save face, as the surrender was a significant personal and professional blow.
The surrender ceremony itself was meticulously planned to underscore the magnitude of the British defeat. On the morning of October 19, the British troops marched out of their fortifications to the designated surrender field. They were accompanied by the tune "The World Turned Upside Down," a somber reflection of the momentous shift in power.
General O'Hara, carrying Cornwallis's sword, initially approached the French commander Rochambeau, who deferred to Washington. O'Hara then attempted to surrender to Washington, who also deferred, directing him to Washington's subordinate, Major General Benjamin Lincoln. This chain of command highlighted the unity and cooperation between the American and French forces.
Lincoln accepted the sword and the formal surrender. The British troops then proceeded to stack their arms and colors in a ceremonial gesture of defeat. The sight of British soldiers laying down their weapons was a powerful and emotional moment for the American and French forces, symbolizing the culmination of years of struggle and sacrifice.
The surrender at Yorktown had far-reaching implications. It effectively ended major combat operations in the American Revolutionary War. News of the surrender reached Britain in November, where it caused a political upheaval. The British government, already weary of the costly conflict, began to seriously consider negotiations for peace.
In America, the victory at Yorktown galvanized the revolutionary cause. It demonstrated the effectiveness of the Franco-American alliance and the ability of the Continental Army to achieve decisive victories. Celebrations erupted throughout the colonies, and Washington's leadership was solidified as the cornerstone of the American struggle for independence.
The impact of the surrender was also felt diplomatically. The victory at Yorktown bolstered American negotiators, including Benjamin Franklin, John Adams, and John Jay, in their discussions with the British. The resulting Treaty of Paris, signed in 1783, formally ended the war and recognized the independence of the United States.
The surrender of Cornwallis at Yorktown remains one of the most iconic moments in American history. It not only marked the end of British hopes to suppress the revolution but also set the stage for the birth of a new nation. The coordinated efforts of American and French forces, the strategic brilliance of their leaders, and the unwavering resolve of countless soldiers and citizens culminated in this defining victory.
As we reflect on the surrender at Yorktown, it's important to remember the lessons of unity, resilience, and strategic planning that it embodies.
The surrender at Yorktown on October 19, 1781, marked a pivotal turning point in the American Revolutionary War, but it didn't immediately end the conflict. The aftermath of Yorktown saw a series of political and diplomatic maneuvers that would ultimately lead to the signing of the Treaty of Paris in 1783.
After the surrender, General George Washington maintained the Continental Army's readiness, aware that the war was not officially over. The British still held significant strongholds, including New York City, Charleston, and Savannah. However, the loss at Yorktown significantly weakened British resolve and shifted the political landscape in Britain.
News of Cornwallis's defeat reached Britain in late November 1781 and caused a political crisis. The British government, led by Lord North, faced immense pressure from Parliament and the public to end the costly war. The defeat undermined support for continued military operations in America, and calls for peace grew louder.
In early 1782, Lord North's government fell, and a new administration under Lord Rockingham, who was more amenable to negotiating peace, took power. The Rockingham administration opened formal negotiations with American representatives in Paris. Benjamin Franklin, John Adams, and John Jay led the American delegation.
The negotiations were complex and involved not just the American and British representatives but also the French and Spanish, who had their interests and claims. The Americans were determined to secure favorable terms that recognized their independence and territorial rights. The French, led by Foreign Minister Vergennes, sought to support their American allies while securing their interests in the broader geopolitical context.
One of the key issues in the negotiations was the western boundary of the United States. The American delegation insisted on the Mississippi River as the western boundary, a claim that was initially contested by both the British and the Spanish. Franklin, Adams, and Jay were resolute, and their firm stance eventually paid off.
The negotiations also addressed the rights of American fishermen, particularly in the Newfoundland fisheries, which were crucial for the New England economy. Another significant issue was the treatment of Loyalists, who had supported the British during the war. The British sought assurances that Loyalist property would be restored and that they would not face retribution.
The Treaty of Paris, signed on September 3, 1783, was a triumph for the American delegation. The key provisions of the treaty included the recognition of American independence, the establishment of borders extending to the Mississippi River in the west, the Great Lakes in the north, and Spanish Florida in the south. Additionally, Americans gained fishing rights off the coast of Newfoundland and Nova Scotia.
The treaty also addressed the issue of debts owed to British creditors, stipulating that pre-war debts would be honored. While the treaty recommended the restitution of Loyalist property, this provision was more advisory than enforceable, leading to ongoing tensions regarding Loyalist claims in the post-war years.
The signing of the Treaty of Paris was celebrated throughout the newly recognized United States. It marked the official end of the war and the beginning of a new era for the nation. The Continental Army was disbanded, and Washington resigned his commission, returning to Mount Vernon with the intent to retire from public life.
The impact of the Treaty of Paris extended beyond the immediate political and territorial gains. It set a precedent for the peaceful resolution of conflicts and the establishment of international norms. The recognition of American independence by one of the world's most powerful empires was a monumental achievement.
The aftermath of Yorktown and the Treaty of Paris also had significant implications for the broader geopolitical landscape. The success of the American Revolution inspired other colonial uprisings and independence movements around the world. It demonstrated that colonial powers could be challenged and that new nations could emerge from the struggle for self-determination.
Domestically, the new United States faced the daunting task of building a nation from the ground up. The Articles of Confederation, which had governed the colonies during the war, proved inadequate for the needs of a growing and diverse country. This realization eventually led to the drafting and ratification of the United States Constitution in 1787, establishing a stronger federal government.
The legacy of the Siege of Yorktown and the subsequent Treaty of Paris is profound. They represent not just a military victory but the triumph of the revolutionary ideals of liberty and self-governance. The success of the American Revolution laid the foundation for a nation that would grow to become a beacon of these principles.
As we reflect on the aftermath of Yorktown and the Treaty of Paris, it's clear that these events were crucial in shaping the future of the United States. They were the culmination of years of struggle, sacrifice, and strategic brilliance by countless individuals committed to the cause of independence.
The victory at Yorktown and the resulting peace treaty remind us that the fight for freedom and self-determination is never easy but always worth pursuing.
The legacy of the Battle of Yorktown extends far beyond the immediate military victory. It represents a defining moment in the American Revolution, encapsulating the resilience, determination, and strategic prowess that characterized the fight for independence. This legacy continues to resonate today in various facets of American society and its values.
The victory at Yorktown proved that a determined and united force could overcome a powerful and seemingly invincible empire. This triumph has inspired countless movements for freedom and self-determination worldwide. The principles of liberty and self-rule championed during the American Revolution have influenced revolutions and independence movements in France, Latin America, and beyond.
Domestically, Yorktown reinforced the importance of unity and cooperation. The successful Franco-American alliance demonstrated the power of international collaboration in achieving common goals. This lesson has been carried forward in American foreign policy, emphasizing the importance of alliances and partnerships in addressing global challenges.
The battle also highlighted the effectiveness of unconventional warfare tactics and the critical role of intelligence and espionage. The contributions of figures like James Armistead underscore the history of national efforts. His story, and those of other unsung heroes, remind us that contributions to significant causes come from all segments of society.
Yorktown's legacy is also evident in the American military tradition. The strategic use of trenches and artillery at Yorktown set a precedent for future military engagements. The integration of land and naval operations, as seen with the French fleet's blockade, became a model for combined arms operations that the U.S. military continues to employ.
On a symbolic level, Yorktown represents the culmination of the American ideals of perseverance and justice. The victory reinforced the notion that the struggle for freedom is noble and achievable, regardless of the odds. This belief has fueled American identity and its role as a global advocate for self-determination and justice.
The commemorations and memorials dedicated to the Battle of Yorktown serve as enduring reminders of its significance. The Yorktown battlefield is now part of the Colonial National Historical Park, preserved for future generations to learn about and reflect on the events that shaped the nation. Annual reenactments and ceremonies celebrate the victory and honor those who fought for independence.
Educationally, Yorktown's legacy is woven into the fabric of American history curricula. Students across the country learn about the strategies, key figures, and outcomes of the battle, fostering an understanding of the nation's revolutionary roots. This education promotes a sense of pride and appreciation for the sacrifices made to establish the United States.
The principles exemplified by the Siege of Yorktown have been invoked during critical moments in American history. During the Civil War, President Abraham Lincoln drew parallels between the fight for independence and the struggle to preserve the Union and end slavery. The spirit of Yorktown has been a touchstone for leaders seeking to rally the nation around common causes.
In modern times, the legacy of Yorktown continues to inspire civic engagement and the pursuit of justice. The battle's lessons about the power of unity and the importance of standing up for one's rights resonate with contemporary movements advocating for social and political change. Yorktown serves as a reminder that the quest for liberty and equality is an ongoing journey.
The victory at Yorktown was not just a military triumph but a turning point that affirmed the viability of the American experiment. It demonstrated that a new nation, founded on the principles of liberty and self-determination, could succeed against formidable odds. This success has become a foundational narrative in American culture and identity.
As we reflect on the lasting legacy of Yorktown, it's clear that its impact extends beyond the pages of history books. It lives on in the values, policies, and aspirations of the United States. The battle exemplifies the enduring belief that freedom, justice, and unity are worth fighting for and that they are achievable through perseverance and collaboration.
Yorktown's legacy is a testament to the power of hope and determination. It reminds us that, even in the face of overwhelming challenges, a united and resolute effort can lead to extraordinary outcomes. This legacy continues to guide and inspire Americans as they navigate the complexities of the modern world.
The story of Yorktown is more than a chapter in American history, it is a beacon of what can be achieved through courage, strategy, and unity. As we honor this legacy, we reaffirm our commitment to the principles that define the United States and strive to build a future that reflects the ideals for which so many fought and sacrificed.
As we move forward, let's keep the spirit of Yorktown alive, remembering that the quest for freedom and justice is a continuous endeavor. The lessons from Yorktown are as relevant today as they were in 1781, guiding us toward a more just world. We hope you enjoyed this dive into the Battle of Yorktown and its lasting legacy. It's always fascinating to explore how pivotal moments in history continue to shape our world today.
Absolutely, Chuck. And we love hearing from our listeners. Your feedback and topic suggestions help us create the content you want to hear. So, if there's a historical event or figure you'd like us to cover, let us know through our social media channels. We're always eager to dive into new topics and bring history to life for you.
And don't forget to check out our new merchandise. We've got some great designs that any history enthusiast would love. There's a link in the show notes, and every purchase supports the show and helps us keep bringing you these episodes.
We'd also like to remind you that every episode of the History AI podcast is evergreen, meaning you can go back and listen anytime. History doesn't change, and our discussions are always relevant, no matter when you tune in.
A special thank you to all our listeners for your continued support. We truly appreciate you taking the time to listen, and we hope you found this episode both informative and engaging.
And now, we have a small favor to ask. If you enjoyed this episode, please take a moment to rate and review us on your podcast platform. A 5-star review really helps us reach more people and grow our community of history enthusiasts.
Also, don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode. And most importantly, share this episode with your friends, family, or anyone you think would enjoy a journey through history. Your shares help keep the podcast going and allow us to continue exploring the fascinating events of the past.
That's right. Your support, whether through reviews, subscriptions, or sharing our episodes, makes a huge difference. It helps us bring you more great content and keeps the history conversation alive.
Thanks again for joining us on the History AI podcast. I'm Chuck.
And I'm Marco. Until next time, keep exploring history and sharing the stories that shape our world.
See you next time, and don't forget to share the history love. Discover the dark, enchanting world of shadowed journeys, the tales of Jordan and Squishy. Follow Jordan, a seemingly innocent girl with a hidden power, and her loyal companion Squishy, who reincarnates into different animals after each battle. Venture into the ominous depths of the Whispering Woods as they face fierce creatures and uncover ancient secrets. Will Jordan succumb to the darkness within, or will she find the strength to forge a new destiny? Perfect for fans of dark fantasy and epic quests, this spellbinding tale will captivate and leave you pondering the fine line between hero and villain. Dive into Shadowed Journeys today. Available on Amazon now.